Today on Toy Habits, we'll be taking a look at the heir to the Arashikage clan, Storm Shadow, and we'll be revealing his custom file card based on the Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins movie. And before we get into the review, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you can be alerted to the latest reviews, news, and episodes when they drop. Hey everyone, welcome back to Toy Habits, and today we are taking a detailed look at the G.I. Joe Classified Series G.I. Joe Snake Eyes Origins, man that was a mouthful, Storm Shadow figure, his weapons and accessories, and his box art, so let's get right to it. And let's start off like we usually do by looking at the front of the box, and Storm Shadow comes in the Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins G.I. Joe Classified Series window display, and you can see all of the accessories it comes with, and he's set off by a beautiful new Arashikage symbol in the background, which we'll take a look at once we open him. And zeroing in on the art on the side of the box, you see a masked version of Storm Shadow, and the way that this is illustrated, it looks more like watercolor, but I really see what they had to do, because if you had a white uniform, I think all of the art style would have gotten lost if they didn't have this shading detail here. And I really love that the way this is illustrated, and it really brings out some of the details and some of the features that you'll see in Storm Shadow's outfit. And although the illustration is a little bit dark for my taste, but I really do get why they put him in a dark setting, because he's Storm Shadow. He's creeping around in the shadows. And moving down the side of the box, you can see more of Storm Shadow's upper body, and the illustration actually looks really nice, and it bleeds over to the front of the box, which I really like, and you get to see a shot of Storm Shadow's sword bleeding over the side of the box. And my favorite part of this box is actually this really small illustration that you see at the bottom, and I wish that they would have made this larger and made this more of the side of the box art, because you can see that Storm Shadow is about to pull out his sword and do some ninja badassery. And my same comments apply, that the illustrations are a little bit too dark for my taste for the side of the box, but they're illustrated nicely, but I really wish that they would have portrayed Storm Shadow in the actor's likeness. And to bring in some other examples from other box art, you can see that the Snake Eyes box integrated a very nice picture of Henry Golding into the side of the box, and the Baroness box integrated a very nice caricature of Ursula Corberero here. So I really think the Snake Eyes box is lacking that humanistic feel by just putting him behind a mask. I think they should have integrated a unmasked version of Andrew Koji to go along with the other styles of box art. And looking at the back of the box, we're only going to focus on this upper half here, because the lower half just has a lot of useless warnings on it, but you do see a very cool illustration of Snake Eyes holding the Morning Light sword. And I do love all the dragon art that they've put on this. They've actually made this box really, really detailed, and I really do think this is a cool looking box, but I think that they should have varied the back of the box a little bit by just swapping out the Snake Eyes illustration with the illustration of the actual figure that's in the box. Now, the box from the G.I. Joe Classified Series Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins movie really reminds me of what they did with the muted color palette for the G.I. Joe Classified Series Deluxe Snake Eyes. So they use a lot of blacks, reds, and whites and grays here. And you can also see the Arashikage symbol represented up here on both versions, and I just think they did a great job with the box art overall, just giving it a very different look and feel from the rest of the G.I. Joe Classified Series figures. And looking at the side of the box, we have a new color scheme for all the levels in iconography, which are done in gradients of grays, which really look really nice. And it really complements this black box that we have here. And we also have the Arashikage logo at the top here in red, which really ties everything together really nicely. And with this new box art, we are debuting a totally new file card for the Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins movie line of figures, and Storm Shadow is the first in the series. We wanted to bring in the movie look and feel to the file cards and represent the color palette of blacks, grays, and reds. You'll also notice that the Cobra symbol has been replaced with the Arashikage symbol for these file cards where appropriate, and we've even added an image of the Tokyo Imperial Palace to tie in the set design that you will find in the movie. Now let's take a closer look at what Storm Shadow is known for. He is a level 4 at Covert Ops. He is a level 3 at using bladed weapons. He's also a level 3 at infiltration. And finally, he's a level 4 at ninjutsu. And here is a close-up of that Rashikage symbol that you can find on the inside of the box. I just pulled out the insert just to show you, and I think they did a really good job just giving it a different presentation than your standard Cobra and G.I. Joe star. So I actually really love the insert here, and it just really sets this box apart from all of the other figures in the G.I. Joe classified line. So here's a question for everyone. What is the actual coloring of Storm Shadow? Is it more of a darker cream color or a whiter cream color? So before we get into this review of the figure, I wanted to make mention that when I saw the coloring of the figure earlier in the year, I was immediately turned off from wanting it. I thought Storm Shadow's clothing looked too yellow, but when I saw the figure in real life, it was actually more white than I thought it was. So I applied a filter to the photos and the videos in this review so that they match more what your eyes will see when you see the figure on the shelf. So the moral of this PSA is don't let the photos that you see online deceive you. Storm Shadow is a lot whiter in real life, so hopefully this helps make your decision whether to get him for your collection or leave him on the peg a lot easier. And now you know. And you know the rest. And now that Storm Shadow is out of the box, we can take a closer look at his head sculpt, and just wanted to make one note that his whole paint app is this cream color that you're going to see all over this figure, and the way to differentiate parts from each other is to have very defining lines and texturing, and this mask has all of that. So let's take a closer look. And taking a closer look at the mask, you can see the defining lines around his mouth. They also use shapes as well to outline his face, which gives it a lot of definition. You'll also find the same line detail running all the way over his mask and all the way around to the back as well. So just given that this is a white mask, the lines really help define the features to his face. And taking a closer look at the texturing, you can see some horizontal line detail that's running across his nose as well as his mask in this front portion here. But other than that, the mask has really the same texture all the way around. But I think it's a really nice looking head sculpt. So I wanted to bring in the Arctic Mission Storm Shadow just to give you an example of how the texturing and lines were done on a black mask here. So if you take a look at both of these figures, you can see how similar and different they are. Obviously, the Arctic Mission Storm Shadow does have a lot more texturing, but you also do see those defining lines in the mask as well. And turning your attention to the facial detail, they did a really good job representing his face underneath the mask. For example, you can see the lip detail that's underneath his mask. You can also see his nose. And if you turn your attention to the look on his face and the way that his eyebrows are sculpted and just the way his facial features are sculpted in between the brows, he almost looks like he has a very calculating look on his face, like he's really thinking about something and he's plotting his next move. And I wanted to bring his alternate head sculpt in just for a quick comparison, and it looks like his skin color is just slightly off in the head sculpt without the mask. Also, I think the eyebrows look a little browner than they should with his unmasked head sculpt. So let's just throw the other head sculpt on just because I do like that version a lot better than the masked version. So I'm going to keep it on for the duration of the review. Throwing his unmasked head sculpt on, I think they really did a good job with the facial features, and it actually really looks like the actor Andrew Koji. They did a really good job with his representation. Now, he's been given a very strong jawline here. You can also see the scar on his eye, so that's really cool. I think they did a great job with that. You can also see some little coloring details and some coloring variation under his eyes, and he's just given a really pensive look in the sculpt, and I just think it fits the figure really nicely. And his hair sculpt is also done really well. It's given a very textured and layered look to it, and his ears look really good, and just the overall sculpt looks amazing from the front all the way to the back. But you do run into the issue where his collar and his outfit is running too far up into his neck. And I'm not sure any way around that because I just think they had to leave that painted for his masked version of his head. And zeroing in on Storm Shadow's torso, you can see that there's a lot of layers going on here, from his collar that's flipped over, which looks really nice, to some of his shoulder armor coming over here, and you can see some of the riveting detail. And I really like what they did with the silver lines here. They have some lighter silver lines on the sides of his torso, which kind of give him more of a defining look, as well as one solid piece of darker silver that's running down the left side of his torso there. And they did put a splash of texturing on his shoulder here, which you really can't see unless you're looking close up with a camera. And turning the figure around to the back, you can see some more of that silver detailing running down the right and left sides, as well as some of that shoulder armor coming over to his back. And you can also see some of the folds in the fabric here. And I think they did a really good job with just representing how clothing would lay on a figure like this. And taking a look at his arms are symmetrical, so his right arm is the same as his left arm, as well as his hand sculpt. So let's take a closer look here. And what you can see is they've added some sculpting detail to his forearm armor. You can also see how his clothes lay in the detail here. There's also some little texturing that they put in this little section that's kind of connecting his forearm to his bicep, as well as you can see the more defined shoulder armor and bicep armor that he has here. And on the underside of his arm, you can see the folds from his clothes, and you can also see some more folds underneath his bicep. And one other thing to note about his hand sculpt is I really love the fingerless glove design that they've given him here. And you can see the clothing wrapping around the hands there, and I think they really did a great job representing the finger and fingernail detail in this sculpt. And there are just a lot of fine details in these G.I. Joe Classified Series figures, and I think they really did a great job with his hand sculpt overall. And moving down to his waist piece, he's been given a really intricate piece here with a lot of detail that you can see in the front belt part. He's got a lot of pouches that go all the way around to the back, and you can also see some more belt detail around the backside there. And his waist piece is also given some defining lines just to help give it some more definition, as it's the same color as his overall paint sculpt. And one thing that I don't really like about this sculpt is just a way that they've over-rotated on the fabric look for his crotch. So I just kind of think it looks more like a diaper than a piece of clothing here. So I wish they would have toned down the sculpt here on the crotch and also the pant legs too, which we'll take a look at in a second. And taking a closer look at the pants, you can see those large folds that they've been giving him, and it just looks like they're just trying to stuff a lot of fabric into his boots. And so I think if they would have just sculpted this a little slimmer, I just think it would have looked a little more natural. And moving down to his boots and shin armor, it looks like he's been given some shin armor that more goes along the side of his legs versus right down the middle, because you can see some of the fabric detail that you have right in the middle there, and you can also see it if you turn the figure around to the back. I do like the look of the shin armor, and I do actually like the look of his shoes. So overall, I think the shoe sculpt and the boot sculpt and the shin armor look really, really nice. And Storm Shadow does come with 2 swords in a backpack and an alternate head sculpt, which we've gone over already. So let's take a closer look at his backpack sheath. And I do really love the way this is sculpted. It's given some riveting detail on the side just to give it some added dimension. And I do like the smallness of this backpack. It's not an oversized sheath. So I really think this will look really nice on the figure once we put it on him and once we put his swords in there as well. And speaking of his swords, let's take a closer look at one of them, because the other one is exactly the same, and you can see some of the texturing detail that they have on the hilt here, which is very nice. The blade is also very detailed as well. It's given some jaggedy edges to it, which makes it look really cool, and it adds a splash of gold at the bottom, as well as it's given some black paint over here, so also black paint on the bottom. And I just think the sword is really well done. And here is Storm Shadow all geared up with swords in hand, and you can see how tiny the backpack sheath is on his back. And I do love the fact that it doesn't take up a lot of room on his back, but he does look really cool in his alternate head sculpt. I have to admit, when I first saw the photos of this figure earlier in the year, Storm Shadow was a hard pass for me, but after seeing that his paint app is more white than yellow in real life, I've changed my tune, and I'm definitely leaving the Andrew Koji head sculpt on this one to commemorate his great portrayal of Storm Shadow in the movie. Also, don't forget to check out the free custom downloadable file card for Storm Shadow in the description. Well, what are your thoughts on the figure? Sound off in the comments below, sub the channel, and happy toy hunting out there.